So Joe Biden went even further than Justin Trudeau in terms of being the NATO clown. And here's evidence of that.
Big boy press conference. Big boy press conference. A big boy press conference. Hold a press conference. A big boy press conference.
Press conference. I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it. The press conference, the big boy press conference. I think y'all are planning to have.
Hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president because I think she was not qualified to be president.
He wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump. Yeah, he's certainly exhibiting those motor skills very well, and those verbal skills. He cannot seem to get it right at any time.
So let's start there. Number one, the fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so,
sure sign of dementia and Parkinson's is whispering like that, bringing his voice down.
So I'm just going to keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish. There's so much, we've made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world.
Yeah, think about it. Think about how much money you spent, inflationary spending. Think about that infrastructure bill that did nothing for infrastructure, but just fed Democratic pet projects. Think about that. Think about the disaster you made of everything you touched. But most of all, and I'll touch on this later, think about the open border you created and sustained, and how many tens of millions of illegals you let in the country. Your record is a disaster as much as your current mental state is a disaster. You have nothing to run on, Joe Biden.
Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million jobs. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin.
And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, and the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin, I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky.
Everything Joe Biden done is the best, the biggest, the most fantastic, the most successful. This is a man who is clearly ego-driven to the point that he is willing to look like a fool before the public because he wants to retain the presidency at any cost. He doesn't care how stupid he looks. He doesn't care how moronic he looks because he thinks it doesn't really matter because he's such a great leader. And let's watch a little more of this one here. I won't put the entire segment on, but here's a few more gaffes.
Or did he break it?
On the last day of the NATO summit, a mortifying gaffe.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
But lucky for President Biden, he had one opportunity to help us forget his terrible faux pas. Here's how that went.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
We're pretty sure he meant his actual VP, Kamala Harris.
Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How are you to combat that criticism from tonight?
The president spent the rest of his time fending off the media feeding frenzy.
Your decline has become noticeable.
It is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision. It's your friends.
They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that.
Would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. No one's saying that.
Actually, everybody's saying that. And that's what Joe Biden isn't getting, or he's not capable of understanding, is just his cognitive ability has sunk that low. I don't know how much he understands. I don't know how much he was pumped up on drugs last night just to get through. This news conference was 2 hours late. By the time they finally dragged him up to the stage, they kept putting it off, putting it off. You know they were debating behind the scenes. Can we get away with it one more time? Is he pumped up enough with drugs so that he can appear at least a little bit understandable, comprehensible? Well, it wasn't a complete catastrophe. It wasn't complete, but it once again indicates that he's barely skating on thin ice, that he's always on the verge of disaster, that he just can't make it for another 4 years. I don't have to convince you of that. But it's amazing to me that the U.S. media took 4 years to understand how bad this guy is. He ran the last campaign from a bunker, from his basement in his Delaware home. He refused to come out except for planned interviews that were scripted. He did a few, what did they call them, drive-in rallies in fields where there were sometimes like 30 to 100 people at these rallies. That's all he did. And there was dozens of incidents caught on film with Joe Biden being unable to distinguish fact from fantasy, from reality from fiction. He didn't know who was in the audience at certain events. He thought people who were dead or long not operating in politics were there. He waved and said hello to people who were not in the audience. He had trouble walking off podiums consistently. He couldn't climb the stairs to Air Force One. He was constantly unable to clarify his positions or to define his policies. It was embarrassing. And now the mainstream media is suddenly saying, oh, yeah, there seems to be a problem. Is he going to do it again? Of course he'll do it again. He's been consistently doing it now for 4 years, if not longer. And it's going to get worse. But the point is, I'll leave it with this. Like Justin Trudeau, Joe Biden is a chronic liar. He cannot tell the truth. And for Biden to suggest for a minute that he has a good record to run on, it's not just about his mental acuity right now. It's about those last 4 years that he did so brilliantly, that he ran the government so well. All he has to do is run on that record. His record is abysmal. If the only part of his record you want to emphasize is the open border, he is the worst president in American history. He has allowed in 45 million illegals. And now he's talking about, we got that problem solved. No, you haven't got anything solved. You are responsible for allowing in 45 million illegals and moving them around the country at taxpayer expense. That is a fact. That's not Republican talking points. That's not Republican propaganda. These are facts that have been long established. This is what the Biden administration has been all about. And what about those children? 600,000 children lost in the United States to trafficking. I can't say what kind of trafficking because I'll probably be punished for doing so, but you know what I'm talking about. Biden is responsible for that as well. That is a tragedy. That is a crime. This man should not be rewarded with another 4 years as president. And the fact that anyone would even consider him able to function for another 4 years as president is insane. And they're as delusional as Joe Biden is. So he needs to get out of this race. Although, if he stays in the race, it'll be the best thing Donald Trump could possibly ask for and the worst thing the Democrats could possibly hope for. But do you think Kamala Harris is any better? This is a woman who can't put a sentence together either, who repeats the same phrases constantly.
What could be unburdened by what had been. Who saw what could be unburdened by what had been. To see what can be unburdened by what has been. To see what can be unburdened by what has been. To see what is possible and what can be unburdened by what has been. To see what can be unburdened by what had been. We see what can be unburdened by what has been. The ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been. A future unburdened by what had been. The ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been.
Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard and being a part of the Craydens Right channel. If you've watched this episode to this point, you've watched it all. And that's really important for a small station like this. We always say subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the Crayden resistance. Resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. And if you become a subscriber, if you're a supporter of this station or a member through Substack, through YouTube, and now you can be a local as well, that's so important to us because I couldn't do this without you. I made a decision to become an independent journalist about a year ago because I wanted to bring all of my experience in the military, in journalism, to you. I don't promise anything I can't deliver. I don't offer clickbait. I offer truth. The truth is out there, and it's my job to bring that truth to light and to you. Thanks for being a part of the Craydens Right resistance, and we'll see you again soon.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist